Thanks for having me here today. It's really exciting to have an opportunity to talk about the Trash to Cash project, which is an EU-funded project we're working on at the Centre for Circular Design. We used to be called TED. We're now Centre for Circular Design. My co-director, Kate, is here. And this Trash to Cash project is one of a few that we're working on at the moment around textile collaborations with scientists on new material developments for the circular economy. The paper I'm presenting today is definitely one that's taken me out of my comfort zone. So I appreciate the other references from the keynote and the previous paper about how important it is that we look at what we are as textile designers and we think about pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones in order to make our skills and abilities more effective and more impactful. Gone are the days where we can sit in the studio and craft samples. We're getting out there now with our samples, maybe in tow, but we're making change happen. And it's important we reflect and we share those insights with each other. So I'm going to take us through a couple of experiments and this idea of using the face as a way to bring a disparate group of researchers together to form a sort of sense of trust. Our background is over 20 years now in TED, and now recently, very, very recently, to the point where we haven't even got a logo yet, we are the Centre for Circular Design. It's important to note that idea of longitudinal practice and study for textiles, and this is something also mentioned in the keynote. It's important that we practice our textiles and follow our hunches and do the things that appeal to us, whether they make sense or not, to ourselves and to our partners sometimes too. You just have to do what it is you have the hunch to do, and then you have to make it make sense later. And of course we need time, and a long practice can help us reflect and look back and make sense of those hunches later. And we've been doing that, I think, in TED. This project work around shirts is also part of a project I've been doing completely as a personal pursuit. Upcyclingtextiles.net is where you can find that work. It's the Top 100 project. I've been working with polyester shirts for a really long time, just playing really, just sort of seeing what if. And it's turned into something a little bit more maybe significant, but certainly something I'm now happy to sort of talk about and to place. So having a voice, having an ability, having the skills of a textile designer, but then creating tools and strategies to share and to communicate and to educate and to nurture. Those are the things that we've been doing and the way in which we think that textile design research needs to evolve if we're going to have a positive effect on the environment. The Trash to Cash project looks at the waste that the textile industry is producing and attempts to bring together a very broad disciplined group of people to take waste and turn it into new fibres. Primarily cellulosics and polyester. We're taking waste paper pulp, waste cotton polyester, and waste polyester clothing, and working with material scientists in Finland and in Sweden to extrude and develop new fibres. So not just making new fibres, but actually making fibres with an engineered functionality. So really trying to make waste into something of high value. Spread across Europe, at this moment in time, this is not an easy project. Trying to do that technically, this is not an easy project, because that technology is very early stage in some cases, actually, and it is more difficult than I certainly imagined, the chemical dissolution of a fibre and turning it into a new fibre. Taking our waste and making new products works in theory, but we have many, many contaminants and many barriers in the way. So this is a project where lots of people meet on a regular basis and try and thrash this out from lots of different perspectives. When we wrote the project, the reason it's unusual and the reason it appealed to us, I think, as textile design researchers, is that what we're doing is creating a new methodology, DDMI, Design-Driven Material Innovation. That's the main outcome of the project. of the project, sorry. So although we're trying to innovate with the fibres, what the EU actually funded was the publication, the development of a model which would enable us, textile design researchers, to work with these cross-sectoral collaboration partners in an effective way. And this sort of model doesn't exist. We've just got DDMI emerging now, design-driven innovation. DDMI is what we're aiming for here. So innovation happens in isolation, but our aim was to bring people together to create a model for these kinds of collaborations. But also we have consumer behaviour researchers in the consortium, so we're looking at the user perspective as well. Our hunch, and what I want to talk about today in this paper, was that within my team, our team at UAL, we knew that textile designers would be able to make a contribution in this kind of project, but that we would have very different methods to the scientists. And actually, I don't know if you've worked in sort of scientifically driven funded projects, the onus on scientific outcomes and the rigour of those is very high. And it's actually hard to articulate your value when you don't publish that way. And you don't rely on data in the same way. And you don't tweak your experiments forward with one new set of chemical parameters. You know, so we had to be brave and follow our hunches and follow our instincts. So what we knew was that in making the collaborations work, some of our training and backgrounds in textile design practice would bring a new freshness to the way in which the insights were generated. Early on, we started with podcasting and actually just talking to people, recording their voices, like Kath sort of making a film. Absolutely now we're in that space where talking and discourse and seeing it all is as important as developing these ideas through into papers. So we were talking, but as we were talking, we were realising that the face-to-face time that was taking place on our workshops in whatever country was so important. And the work between that was often on Skype or some kind of teleconference platform was more stilted. You know, so we had to make the most of working with each other face-to-face and sort of getting to know each other and speed all of that sort of process up. So we're in the Trash to Cash project, UAL is funded to work on around 3 of the work packages, sort of internal communications, external communications, and then the design, research, product development package as well, work package 3. So we're spread across 3 packages. So this is really the work that takes place around the internal communications, work package 1. The team then we built had communication designers in as well as textile designers. So we were able to not just sort of work on the material developments with Alto Arts, but also take some of those insights across to say sort of, well, how do we get this team of people working together? So we fused textile design practice approaches with communication design approaches. We were starting to sort of do this already in TED with our TED 10 animations, beginning to write animation scripts, make films, and understand that the progression of our research was heavily reliant on the way in which we created our dissemination platforms and tools. So for this project, we moved from photographic imagery through into mapping, back to textile design and print design, back to communication design and surveys, reviews and analysis, and then an internal reflection resulting in a textile artifact. So we sort of found that what we did intuitively was sort of move between, alternating between a textile design and a communication design method. The face, as we began to sort of look at it after sort of thinking about the voice and developing the podcast channel, which is on iTunes if you want to sort of catch up on it, we began to sort of look around and understand that the face obviously has a history, a trajectory in scientific research. Cole in particular is somebody that's published formative works around the idea that as babies we know that recognition with our mothers is imperative at building our sense of identity, but also research now showing the speed at which communication is improved through face-to-face exchange. Other strands look at the way in which facial expressions and the way our face moves can actually affect the way in which we can affect the actions of others. So the face can be a force. Quite literally, how you hold your face in a meeting can convey something that maybe you can't articulate, which can maybe get your point across. So, you know, there are these, as we began to look at the face, we understood that it was highly complex in its sort of social, cultural understanding. But we just sort of came at it from our background. We wanted to capture the faces of all the participants early on to build the website. And in doing so, this is literally the first time I meet the people that we're going to be spending 3.5 years with. I took their portraits against a common backdrop so that we literally put a face to a name and then made that a resource, put it online, shared it with everybody. And with over 50 people in the project, you could put a face to a name. That was step one. And that formed our kind of pre-experiment. Then when Rosie joined the team, Rosie Hornbuckle, she realised that that archive was very useful, that if you moved around those faces, you could actually start to cluster and group the expertise. Because quite early on we were getting feedback. It was our job to receive feedback all the time after workshops, saying it's really tricky to know who to have the right conversation with. You know, I need to kind of progress and get that polyester pellet to here to do this, but I can't remember if it's him or her or... So what we realised is we needed to do a capability map and actually sort of place people into boxes. Horrendous as an artist even to say that. But Rosie did it, not me. But the brilliant thing was we collected the data back, everybody responded, everybody needed to know who everybody else was in the project to proceed. And she created a data set and then quickly realised that one of the other problems we were experiencing was that everybody was turning up with their own form of data set. Everybody had their own graph, their own chart, their own set of figures. And actually, you couldn't really move that easily between the sort of scientific methods. So we realised that by making playful games and interactive sort of moments in these workshops, we could create a visual presentation of the data and allow people really in so that they could really absorb the information. So she took the photographs, she made stickers, and in the lunch break, the break times of 1 2-day meeting, every single person at that meeting took their own face stickers and sort of playfully put themselves within the sectors of expertise. We already had this data. This was just for them to interact with it and create something visual. So the face stickers, the face map became this quite iconic moment in the project where we understood that some people were really dexterous and kind of everywhere, and maybe they were our generalists, or maybe they were super experienced in life cycle projects. And then there were some that just were in one section and they were deeply expert in that section. And so this face map really started to allow us to have the right kind of conversations at the right time. I'll speed up a little bit. How long have I got left? Tell me. Okay. So the second experiment then was where I wanted to fundamentally bring everybody to the same level. If you create something together, if you sit around and create something, you know that a sense of connection is there. You have something physical to represent the collaboration. I've been reading a lot about meditation and facial recognition. Asked me over coffee for a personal anecdote which resulted in somebody having a baby, but where staring at somebody in an experiment has resulted in, you know, a love match and a baby. You know, in our time of speed and social media, to sit and look at each other becomes more and more rare. So I got the scientists to sit around, first of all, to meditate, and then after they had entered the calm state, to sit opposite a person they hadn't talked to in the project or hadn't worked with or didn't know very well, and to stare at each other for 5 minutes. And after that staring, they then drew each other's portrait. I then took the portraits away and made a garment which is on show downstairs. I got feedback then afterwards, actually after quite a big gap of time, I got people to reflect on that experience and what had happened and who they had looked at and the conversations that had then emerged between those people. That's a very positive set of feedback comments. I took the work away. It was horrendous. bad drawings by lovely people. No, some of them are amazing drawings, but you know, as a print designer, after all these years with a big project, I had to put onto a shirt something that really challenged me aesthetically to make it connect and come together. And I literally drew the lines and extended the lines of everybody's drawings to make a kind of pattern that kind of brought everyone together. And in doing so, you know, and I just had to sit in that sort of stage of the methodology on my own and contemplate this and get into the flow and really just sort of understand what it was that I was trying to do through the sort of printmaking, the paper. So the two shirts that have come out that are the 17th in this series, the Top 100 project, represent the emerging connections between people. They also represent some of the ideas I'm not able to tell you yet about the scientific breakthroughs, the material breakthroughs that are happening. That will be kind of coming later next year. But we are looking at sharing economy models. And so the shirts have actually been in Slovenia this summer being shared by people as part of the Biennale as we start to explore how garments can circulate between people. Again, building connections in new ways through textile design, fashion textile design. My insights are in the paper. I better wrap up. More information, please do go to trash2cashproject.eu and look out for what we're doing in Centre for Circular Design. Thank you.